producer and stunt woman extraordinaire, Zoe Bell.
Hello.
That's really
Hi,
old.
Tracie.
Hi. Hi.
Tracie almost didn't make it until just
here.
now.
I just ran in.
Because she was busy doing stuff for Annie, which she just booked.
Okay, so sight unseen. I mean, I'm sure. Curiously, how many of you out there saw the film at Fantasia or the Tribeca Film Festival, or however does you see movies? Okay, so a few people. Good, good, good. Well, IFC Films is going to be putting out this film. Just based on this clip, I don't know how many of you know absolutely nothing about it, other than the fact that there's a lot of ass kicking in it. So what's Josh? After you're done taking a picture, let's start with you and give a. Just. Why don't you give a little setup on what RAZE is about? What were we just watching there?
Well, RAZE is about an underground society of people they've existed since like the ancient Greek times, and every 5 years they have this. I wouldn't say it's a purge, but they have this little tournament, and it's to abduct 50 women from society. They just pluck normal women, mothers, daughters, wives, and put them in this situation in a concrete bunker underground where they're forced to kill each other in hand-to-hand. It's a comedy. To kill each other in hand-to-hand combat, and their whole mentality is that they're doing it to show the true power of women, like what you are truly capable of as a woman. It's fucked up, but that's basically what it's about. And if you don't, if you refuse to fight or you lose a fight, then they kill whoever you hold closest in the world. Your husband, your daughter, your son, whoever.
Well, speaking of what women are capable of, I'd love to hear from you two, because this is a extremely...
Is that in here, or is that a neighboring?
Hello? It is a very extremely physical film. No, I'll wait till they're done.
I'm sitting here throwing my screams.
Before we even get into that, let's just step back. How did you two get involved with Josh in the film?
I think I came along first. Josh reached out to me saying, you know, we've known each other for years and years and years, and he reached out to me sort of saying, I've been talking with these guys about this concept, and it was quite a loose concept. It was sort of based on a short film when I was... The script of a short, it hadn't been turned into a feature, and they just liked the concept of it. And the short originally ended at the end of the first fight. I don't know, I just liked the idea, and I was like, oh, we'll take a meeting, why not? So I went in and met the guys, and sitting around a table with these three guys was like, I've taken meetings with loads of people that want me in a fight film. I don't know why. But the amount of times I've sat there and just been like, it just isn't, it doesn't feel like it's going to eventuate. It's just sort of a pipe dream, or they're kind of wanting to use me to possibly get something or to do. But I felt like these guys would make this movie, or something would happen with it regardless, which kind of it's a settling place to walk into for me. And we were talking this day, and then the conversation came up about me potentially being a producer, and at that point I was like, and you guys don't even have a choice now, I'm in, and I'm producing, and I'm going to have opinions, and you will hear them, and he's been regretting it ever since. And Tracie came on for me. And Hayden.
Okay. They did kind of pay me a little bit. As a producer.
Sorry.
No, Zoe asked if I would do it, and I was like, yeah. She said, do you want to read the script? I said, if you want me to.
I was like,
but
you should definitely read the script before you say that.
I'm like, I can read it, but I'm already telling you I will do it. But
it's exactly how that conversation.
Yeah. So here I am. You know.
She never read the script. No, I'm kidding.
I never read the script.
Which was amazing because she actually said the lines from the script. So that's how connected we
I
are.
know. We're so into
She just improv the exact lines.
Well, Josh, you gave a little bit of setup, but we should go ahead and get to another clip here. This one has Sherilyn Fenn and Doug Jones, who you might recognize.
This has got kind of everybody.
This
This one's got like pretty much all the, well, not all the girls, but.
So here we go, another clip from RAZE.
Greetings, victors. We have goaded the initiates from their homes in frenzy. We lead our Maenads into battle with one another. Beast within every Maenad, made wild by the frenzy, make the whole earth thunder with your rhythm. With thundering shouts and screams, tearing creatures limb from limb with their bare hands. Initiates, fighters. Ladies, please forget the semantics. We tend to get a bit excited during these times.
Subtle, I felt like some of the action was coming from the next room.
I know, we really did something special with the sound. It's almost like it's from a different film.
Exactly. They sometimes say that a film is written 3 times, in the screenplay, when you're actually shooting, and then in the editing room. And I'm just curious about, there's certain films that this has reminded me of, but it doesn't quite look like, like a women in prison film, because it just has its own bonkers structure. Can you talk a little bit about how things changed once you were actually shooting and once you got Zoe and some of the actors on board?
Well, I mean, stuff didn't really change that much once Zoe came aboard, because Zoe was aboard like since the very, very beginning. So, that didn't really change too much. When we started shooting, we maybe too much so tried to stick to the script as much as possible, because we felt like we had a really strong script. But what did change a lot was, in the script it'll basically have like a few beats of a fight, and once we start shooting, those fights obviously come to life. So that's what was probably the biggest thing that changed in terms of like what we thought we could accomplish and the amount of time we thought we could accomplish it in.
Well, they talk about like how many pages you can shoot in a day. So when it's dialogue, if you go through 6 pages in a day or whatever, but when the script says blah 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 and so versus blah blah, well, those like couple of words, blah blah versus blah blah, is like 3 pages of stuff to shoot. So you're like, oh, we've got half a page of stuff to shoot, but you forget that a quarter of that page is in fact 3 pages on its own. So we had some really large days. We're like, oh, we did this fight in the morning.
Yeah, it was the fight. I mean, we did 19 action sequences in 30 days, so that's not. It's something that I do not recommend to anyone, including myself. But and when we got into the editing room, it changed a bit in terms of like the way that like the film was structured, like the overall structure, just in terms of ratcheting it up, just making it as tight as we possibly could. And ultimately, the film turned out, it's pretty close to what we were aiming for tonally,
I feel like it kind of started where the aim was this, and during the process it kind of like, what about this, maybe that, but this, the sound design came in, and then in the end it kind of was like, oh, and came back to sort of like...
Yeah.
Could you talk about some of those like eureka moments where something ended up changing the structure, or something that happy accidents or things that you didn't know were going to happen?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, like, I was pretty adamant in the beginning about like not wanting to make like an exploitative, women in prison film. I'm not. There's definitely a market for for exploitation films and stuff like that, but it just doesn't happen to be where my taste gravitates. So I thought that if I was going to be a part of something like this, we needed to try to take it seriously. So when we were shooting it, I took it very seriously. The emotional aspects of the performances and the relationships between the women, and like I tried to keep it like as serious as possible, and was trying to make it this serious film. Now, ultimately, the film that you watch there are emotional moments and there are serious moments, but it's also, it's actually a bit of a ride. It's a bit of a romp, like a very violent romp through, and that is something that came later. It's not as serious, like, this is going to be a serious film about whip. It's like, that's not what it is. However, had we not treated it as seriously when we were shooting, then the performances, I don't think, would have come across as strong as they did. Like, because all the women, like, everybody delivered really powerful performances within the scope of, like, a fight movie.
Well, could you two talk about that, about just how taxing or exhausting it was to have to perform as an actor and do dramatic scenes, but to also have to nail choreography and potentially get hurt?
And we're kind of the perfect two girls to have up here because I think, like, my expertise and experience lay in the action side, and the acting and emotional deliverance is something that I'm least familiar with and have to work really hard at. The emotional acting side is very much so where Tracie's strengths and experiences are, and the action stuff was more, so it was a little bit less familiar to her. So I think we both found the process equally as exhausting.
Yeah.
For sort of the opposite. Like, I sort of fed off the action myself because that's where my comfort level is. So if I'm feeling tired, I feed off making the other person look cool, bring energy to the fights. If I'm getting energy out of them, then I'm kind of feeding off it. And the reality is Sabrina is exhausted and a little bit fucked for most of this movie. So if I'm emotionally exhausted and a little bit fucked, it kind of works for me. So
Yeah,
I used it.
I think that, because it was so, like, intense, the circumstances are so intense, the more tired we were, the better often. We would get there, they would actually make us look more tired than we were. It was not a vanity movie.
No.
I was like, they could put bags in their eyes. I'm like, great, that's just fantastic.
They're adding bags
great.
to our
They're
eyes.
adding just
One of the girls
nastiness.
came in and was like, something about mascara and a little bit of blush, and I was like, oh no,
No, there's no
we're not making
There's no
that.
blush.
Yeah.
It's
There's
blood
mascara
on her
in
face.
front of the camera, but no, there's no contouring, schmontouring.
Yeah, and that's the point where literally you're just laying in the dirt. Literally, like you're rolling around in the dirt. It's like your clothes aren't matching the dirtiness they were yesterday. So just roll in the dirt. Just a whole bunch of your hair in the dirt. Just nasty dirtiness. And then it was so, we did this one scene with Bailey, who plays Cody, where what we were doing was so ridiculously intense. So we're sitting there and we just cut, we're fighting and crying in the dirt, and then all of a sudden I look at her, I'm like, what are we doing with our lives right now? She's like, I'm trying to kill you in the dirt over and over again. And we laughed for about 20 minutes. We could not get it together because it got to a point where we were so tired and exhausted and emotionally drained and physically drained that all we could do was laugh hysterically in the dirt.
Well, and we were all in the same thing. It was like there were many times in between cuts where whoever was in there dying or killing would like cut, and at some point you make some silly comment and everyone's like doing like dirt angels. They're like, what are you doing? You're like, nothing, passing time, go ahead, maybe doesn't matter.
Or like when we did the fight between you and Rachel Nichols, like, which is like one of the most intense, I mean, if it's not the most intense female fight I've ever seen in my life. And like, if you see outtakes, it's literally Zoe and Rachel chasing each other around the inside of like a little 10-foot diameter. I'm gonna get you, and then they chase each other. And then we're like, and action! I'm gonna kill you, bitch!
It's like the relief that's required. But unfortunately for us, I was saying to someone on the way here that everybody that was generous enough to come on board the train that is RAZE were doing it because they wanted to be there. I mean, the conditions were grueling. I mean, the conditions of the movie world was grueling, but I mean, in reality, our sets were tiny, the shit got really hot and really sweaty, and we were inhaling dust.
You'd blow your nose at like lunchtime, and it would just be black,
post-work
bloody
photos
bloody
ever.
noses.
Great
Yeah.
photos.
We were launching them at each other.
Well, it kind of works.
Just one second. So, but I mean, just like long hours, really exhausting. But there was, you know, and there were times when we would have to go to the actors and be like, sorry, we need you for another hour. Oh, okay, would you like a red vine? You know, like, and they were like, of course, where are we going to go? Like, yeah, everyone was just in it.
And napping on the set. You find people just napping.
4 women on one couch.
Big like group naps.
Yeah, it was like puppies.
A collective.
Yeah, totally. Like if you were on a big budget movie with like a lot of diva actresses, we would have never got through it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, now you have the dirty, bloody, snot-filled context for I watch another scene. Violent romp.
House lights.
Whoa!
They call me God.
Go! You know, like that. It was like supposed to be normal people from society, and occasionally you'd get someone that maybe like, oh yeah, I take kickboxing up at like Equinox or something like that, and like that's her experience with martial arts and stuff. But for the most part, it's like normal people, so the choreography stemmed from who the characters were. You know what I mean? So if it's like, so we first had to like kind of track the characters themselves, and then that led into the choreography for each.
Yeah, it was. But that was sort of important I know for me it was important that we didn't have the, you know, like nunchucks versus staff versus, you know, so it was about someone who may be really fit but has never really been in a ring versus someone who's, you know, got a black belt versus someone who like bought a black belt in a cornflake box or something, you know. But the flavor of each fight comes from what it's taking these women to bring it to the table instead of it being a Van Damme movie, you know. The choreography, we had a guy called James Young, who's a super talented choreographer and super talented fighter himself. This was his first feature film as a coordinator. And we had some conversations really early on that went something along the lines of, I'm definitely going to have opinions when it comes to stuff, and with action and stuff, especially because it's girl fights, and I don't want to override you, but I'm definitely going to be really collaborative and I'd love to be involved. Well, more like I'm definitely going to be involved. Do you think you're going to be okay with that? And James was like, I love that idea. I want to hear everything you have to say. And he was just like, which is rare in a stuntman to be that sort of modest and open to it. And he just was brilliant. He and I choreographed most of the fights. He did most of the fights, and then I kind of came in and pissed in the corners, if you will, which is my mum's too.
He definitely, I mean, James, look, and James right after RAZE, like, then he just went to do Captain America, Winter Soldier, and he's also the double for Sebastian Stan. That's the Winter
Talented
Soldier. So
dude.
he's super talented. And the blonde girl in the elevator fight is doubling Scarlett Johansson in Captain America. So, you know, they're just incredible stunt people. But, like, James knew that, like, I mean, also Kenny Gage, and Kenny and I came up with the original story together. Like, Kenny was a professional boxer for many years. So, and, you know, and I am really big into, like, fighting and action and stuff. And so, like, we would all kind of throw in our little 2 cents, and usually the more horrific of the shit in the fights, like, either came from Kenny or myself. You know, be like, oh, here's what we really need to see. And people, oh my God, why did you think of that? Yeah. It's like, just put it in, figure it out. You know?
Yeah.
But
mine was more like, that's not realistic. You know, like, she wouldn't do that. Or if she'd just been punched here, she's gonna pale over, so I want her to get kneed in there. You know, those kind of things. So there was definitely, you know, and then watching the girls, how they moved in real life, like the way Tracie moves as a boxer, we're like, oh, when she gives an uppercut, that looks really powerful. Let's put a couple of those in there. So it was a very kind of, I hate this word, but it was a very sort of organic.
I knew you were
Organic. Organic process. And James did most of the like structural choreography, and then worked with a bunch of the girls for like 3 weeks or something.
3 weeks to a month. There was like a daily little boot camp that would happen in the evening, and this was all like, you know, the girls doing it on their own, not paid.
Yeah, we could.
And like everyone coming to just do like training, and you know, Like Tracie's character specifically, worked on boxing. Sabrina, Zoe's character, comes from like a military background, so she's more, she's a little more well versed in hand-to-hand combat. Then you have a character, Phoebe, who we'll see in like the next clip, who is just a straight up brawler, and she just wants to fuck people up.
Street.
Yeah, street.
Street.
She's straight.
Street.
And then there's this character Bailey, who is just the young kind of girl that the two of them take under their wings, and she comes from like an abusive family, and so her stance, like she's got a boxing stance, but a little bit like kind of like it's very unique to her.
I've never been formally trained.
Yeah, she's never been before. So when she puts up, she's like like this, and you're like, what is that stance? But it works for her,
Character-driven choreography.
But as I'm sorry, I'm just going to chime in. But as an actor who's not a fighter, my background's not in fighting, even though I've taken some fighting stuff before. But
she's a capable fighter.
At Equinox.
Thank you. At Equinox.
Heaps and heaps of Tybo.
Lots of other nights in my room. The scene. We had to approach them like, I approached them as a scene. It just happened to be with movement. So, what's the story of the scene? And there were some punches and kicks and stuff thrown in there, but I couldn't think of them as a fight. I had to think of them as like, okay, what's happening? Who has the upper hand? What am I trying to do here? What am I, because I'm trying to read my scene partner. So I approach it the same way as I would approach any scene, any acting scene, any argument scene, any conversation, anything. And it just
like a love scene.
Just like a love scene, except for with punches to the face.
It's all a dance. It's all.
Well, on that note, let's see some of that brawl in action by Phoebe.
I know.
I know you had a stunt coordinator and all that, but I got to ask, were there any injuries on set?
No.
Shockingly.
Yeah. No, there were no injuries. I mean, there's bruises and scratches, but like, there was no injury.
Did anybody get hit? Like, there were no misses, were there?
One, but it was on purpose. And it wasn't a hit. It was a slap.
I know what that was.
And it was per like a little.
Yeah,
it was required.
Look, it was required. We needed to goad a little bit more of a performance out of someone, and so Zoe and I talked about her really hitting someone. We're not going to say who it is, but
it's in the movie.
It's in the movie. I was like, wow, that's a really good take. Yeah, that was a real hit. That's right.
Definitely want to get to this last clip and then turn it over to you guys for questions. But last but not least, I just want to ask, what was your single favorite moment in the production of this film? Small, big, otherwise, something that just stuck with you.
I'm not like silent because I can't think of any. I'm silent because there were many. It was a bitch to shoot, and like everyone wanted to kill each other. Like we wanted to kill each other, but like at the end, like the whole thing was really beautiful. You know what though was something that was really cool that I just always think of is when we were in pre-production and we were trying to figure out how we were going to pull this off for the amount of money that we had, which was like fuck all. So
whole pre-production.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So how are we going to build this entire world? Because everything was done on a sound stage in Burbank, so we had to build every set that we have, and it's like, okay, we don't have the money to build one of these sets. So, so one day, like I was just kind of brainstorming at home, and I'm a little bit of, you will never guess this, but I'm a little bit of a nerd about like show tunes and stuff like that, and like musicals. So my younger brother and I were at home watching, because that's what I do. We're watching 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. and I was super high. And I was like, oh. And I was watching like the barn raising sequence. It's like this big dance. And I was like, oh man, barn raising. And I was like, dude, we could do a party for all of our friends, throw a cash prize, and have them compete to build all of our sets. So hired a DJ, told the guys, and we were like, oh. So we had a DJ come, we had it catered, we had beer, barbecue, and everything, and literally all our friends came, we had teams, so it was $1,000 cash prize, and we built every set in 3.5 hours.
Not the set like with the art design.
It didn't have everything, but we had
Just
all of our
sites.
flats and everything ready to go, so all the production designer had to do was like, go.
Yeah, it was done. Like, I can't, you guys finished. In
Before you got
there.
there.
I was like, all right, I'm ready. It was like, we're done. I'm like, every flat is built.
You're like, here's a beer. You're like,
Here's free beer.
That's a favorite moment of mine.
my favorite moment was undoubtedly, I mean, I'm not meant to be, well, was we had, I had a constant reoccurring fear that we were going to end up with just a whole bunch of white blonde girls in this movie, and I was like, I can get me some black people, and I want some Asians and some Indians, and I want short ones and fat ones and tall ones, and and I was all like, every time we hired another white brunette, aka, well, I was at the time, that was a friend of someone's, I was like, no, I would tantrum, but I don't have time because we have to shoot this other fight, And then there was one girl that pulled out, I can't even remember the details of it, but one character, it was just for one fight opposite Trace. And we'd run out, she had to leave for some reason, so we were scrambling trying to find, and I was thinking, I'll find a stunt girl. So I was looking for like an Asian stunt girl I could pull in or something, some ethnicity of some description. And Josh walks up to me and I'm in the arena, I think I'm in the middle of a fight or something, like I'm exhausted. And he's like, so we've found a replacement. And we've cast her, she's coming in with, maybe you could do some work with her. And I was
She's not that experienced, so she really needs you to like work with her.
And I was just like, excuse me? Wait, you can't, without telling me I was not even a part of that process? Are you serious? And I was in the middle of starting to get a little bit pissy about it. And he's like, yeah, she's coming in right now. And I was like, you don't even give me a moment to get pissy and then get over it before I meet her? I have to like just pretend to be happy, and as I'm sort of like seething and steaming away, which doesn't happen very often. You don't catch me seething very often. Like, I don't get that pissy on set. And as I'm kind of like getting my head around it, there's a couple of people, I see Tracie sort of walking in, and there's this other tall black guy that I know is walking in. I was like, what is James doing here? And Josh was like, oh, here's the replacement. And I was like...
He said she's blonde. She's another blonde girl.
She's a white blonde girl. And I was like, well, at least she's blonde, I guess. So, and as this woman walked in... I'm hungry. I see this woman walk in, I'm like, fuck, she looks like Rosario. Oh, well, at least she's ethnic. And as she keeps walking in, I'm like, where is she?
Perfect timing.
But I was like, wait a minute, what is Rosario doing here? And then I kind of feel, things start to dawn on you a little bit. And these two are like cheeky little monkeys that they are. And I was like, what? And I literally was like a surprise birthday party. I just started like crying.
They were like literally like 5-year-old girls. Like the three of them were like in the arena, and they were like, yay! And like dancing around. Like,
because we didn't get all behind her back. We had to get Rosario involved behind.
Yeah, without me knowing for ages, which is a big deal because I like to know shit.
She came in, she knew like Ro had been like working on the choreography and working.
She walked in the white tank top and the grey sweats, and I was just like, you guys, I love you so much. It was the most, I've never had a surprise party thrown for me, and that's the best one I can imagine. So yeah, that was definitely a moment. That's my favorite moment. That was the most enjoyable crying I did on that whole shoot.
Yeah.
Tracie, how about you? Do you have a favorite
That's
moment?
my favorite.
That was a cool
That moment's my favorite.
Well, then we'll cut to a clip called Tracie.
Her name, the character name's actually Teresa.
Teresa is my character's name, but yeah, it's fine.
So nice in real life.
That was such a great accidental scene for some way.
We're running a little low on time, but we definitely want to get in a couple questions from the audience. So, yes.
How's it going? This is a question for Zoe and for yourself, Tracie. It's a Fight Club question, right? If you could fight anyone, like alive or dead, who would it be?
Question is, if you would fight anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
She and I need to fight.
No, we're going to fight, and I'm going to die. So that's that. We've been wanting to do a fight together for a while.
Yeah. I hope we don't fake fights, because I don't want to fight anybody for real. I'm actually a total pansy.
Well, you know, William Shatner's here, you know, so, you know, yeah, get that going, man, yeah.
Right here, right now. Let's go.
Last week I challenged my boyfriend to a fight in the parking lot. I said, I'm gonna fight you. Can I fight you? And he was like, what, really? I'm like, no, seriously, outside. Me and you outside in the parking lot, like 3 o'clock high. Let's get it in. Let's get it in. He didn't take me up on it. No. But I wanted to, so I would say that.
How about Spider-Man with glasses there?
If you want to get into stunt work, what would be like the best type of fighting that you should get into?
Any of them is good to have some kind of grounding in being a fighter. I personally would say something sort of basic like Taekwondo. This is where I started, was Taekwondo. I'm not suggesting it's the best martial art out there, but it gives you a basic of you using your legs and you're using punches and you get an idea of stance. But I would definitely go along with boxing as well, because when I see someone fighting on screen, I want to see them looking like they've had to fight and they've had to protect themselves. I don't want to see this. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're in, you know, fighting Jet Li, in which case, go for it. Huh? Kickboxing would be great too, yeah.
Yes, also glasses.
Hi. I just want to know, was there any steps that you have to do that incorporated Jeet Kune Do?
You mean in my career?
Yeah.
There's been sort of many times that a lot of things are kind of combined for us. Like the only times I've done sort of, I have done movies, like Kill Bill, there was specifically wushu and there was specifically samurai, but a lot of the time when you've got fights that are being choreographed by some of these guys that have studied 9 different arts, you know, for like 7 years each, for, I don't know, the fighting will combine moves from everywhere, especially nowadays with MMA being as it is. So yes, I've done everything whether I knew it or not.
I got time for one more.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You came up with the amazing tagline for the movie.
Which came up with the tagline.
It's on the poster.
It's on the
You
poster.
should see the other guy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mike, wasn't that you?
Yeah, I got
That was the.
Yeah, Mike.
Mike Winton, who came to Comic-Con dressed like Waldo.
Yeah. And that's the boss of IFC Midnight, you guys. So he also put out like Maniac. He knows horror.
All right, that was such a short question. We got time for one more, but it's got to be a quick one. Is it a quick one?
It's very quick.
Let's do it.
I have to say I love both of you. I've been a fan for a long time. Specifically, Tracie, for you, I fell in love with you when I saw you in Rent. I saw that film like 6 times.
Thank you.
Any plans, any musical releases? Because I'm in love with your voice, and I'd love to have more of you on my iPod.
Tracie, do you have any
Want you
musical
on my
work coming
iPod
up?
badly.
You know, this is a question I get a lot, because a lot of people are like, when's your CD coming out? And I'm like, I don't have a CD. I don't know what it would be. And I always said that I would probably never make a CD, but literally I get it so often that I'm trying to figure it out.
So I'm with the soundtrack for now.
I'm trying to figure it out. So in the soundtrack, there are a couple of songs on iTunes you can, you know, put my name in. I come up on other people's collaborations, but I don't have like my own CD but I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about follow me on Twitter.
And just so you know,
Do the Pledge
has
the Music
been told-
account.
What?
Do the Pledge the Music, where an artist can start their own project, raise funds like Kickstarter, and you will link it to a charity. If you make your goal,
Pledge
you
the
put
Music?
parts to charity. I just supported John McLaughlin on that, and I'm getting an autographed CD of his for $20, and he made his goal, and 10% went to some youth program to give them bicycles.
That's amazing. Pledge to the music. Got it.
PledgeTheMusic.com.
Bicycles, right there.
Bicycle.
Before we wrap this up, I just want to say that RAZE is going to be coming out through IFC Midnight on January 10th. So